Good evening, I'm Jim Whaley. Tonight it's a pleasure for me to welcome to Cinema Showcase a gentleman often referred to as our greatest playwright, and that's a viewpoint I won't argue with, Mr. Tennessee Williams. He's in Atlanta right now for the premiere of his new play, Tiger Tail, at Alliance Theater. We'll find out about that play tonight as I talk with Tennessee Williams on Cinema Showcase. Thank you very much for joining Cinema Showcase tonight, and right now join me in welcoming to the program Mr. Tennessee Williams. It is a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
And you asked me to explain to everybody watching that you are right now suffering from an eye infection. Which
Yes, I've just come back from New Orleans where I spent the New Year's holidays, 4 days, I believe. I swam in a pool that had been neglected, a private pool, and my eyes are in a terrible shape, but I'll survive on that, I hope.
Good. Let me first ask you the question I know that's on everybody's mind, and that is, how did you happen to select Atlanta as the premiere for your new play?
I didn't select it. Everything is, you know, when you have an agent, agents select things for you, and I'm certainly happy to be here. I think you made an excellent choice.
I think it's a good thing, don't you, that you can now see good theater in other places than New York. For so long, good theater...
You're more likely to see good theater outside of New York, I think. There are only 3 serious plays now running in New York. Shadowbox, The Gin Game, and the new Neil Simon play, which I understand is quite good. Well, 2 of those are closing the end of this month. Not the Neil Simon, of course, but the other 2.
Well, do you think that the state of American theater is it a healthy state right now, or are we in kind of a slump?
Depends on what you're looking for. It's very healthy at the box office. Things like Liza Minnelli's show, The Act, you know, Chorus Line, of course, and things like that. They're selling out, you know. They're having fabulous grosses. But it's very difficult to bring a serious play into New York now.
Because it costs so much, or...?
Because it costs so much, and because this is a period of escapism. People are looking just for, you know, escape. And they seem to have discarded the old idea that they could find a catharsis in seeing serious drama.
You know, that's almost, I guess, a direct reversal as to what we had in the late 40s and early 50s, when everybody wanted to see serious plays.
It is, and don't ask me to explain that phenomenon. I don't know. I can't explain it.
Yeah. I wonder, though, if we will ever get back to... Do you see us going back, perhaps, to that, or are we in for escapism for a few years to come?
I don't have my crystal ball with me.
If you did, you'd be making a lot of money.
I would indeed. I have very few clairvoyants.
Let's talk for a few minutes then about Tiger Tail. This was based on the screenplay for Baby Doll. How did it come about?
It was primarily,
How did it come about?
Well, I'll tell you, most fortuitously, a young man of whom I never heard, now serving as our artistic consultant, Mr. Gary Tucker, arrived at my New Orleans pad suddenly. Or was it the Key West one? It's probably Key West he came first. And he had a suggestion and sort of a draft of a play. Based, that was virtually, you know, Baby Doll just put on in play form. But I thought it was an excellent idea. And I interrupted my attendance at rehearsals to another play of mine, Via Carré, And I took this thing, and I wrote it for the stage. And it fitted quite easily on the stage with some rewrites, some additional scenes.
Well, I was going to ask you how difficult it is to adapt something that was written for one medium into something for another medium.
This happened to be easy. You wouldn't have thought so, but it did turn out to be quite easy.
What is the toughest? Is there a single area when you're writing a play or a screenplay or a book, whatever, that is the toughest for you? Is it the beginning, or getting the initial idea, or what?
I am always confronted with that question, and I never have an adequate answer. I just know that my profession is writing. I can't live without writing, and so I write. I write chiefly for the stage, and the plays just begin. Very often at the end. Very often I'll write the end before I write the beginning.
Many authors do that. I guess that's...
I don't do anything by plan. It just happens.
Do you ever reach the point where you're completely satisfied with what you've written?
Well, I don't think one ever is completely satisfied, no.
Because...
you realize that you've done the best you can within the limits of your abilities. And then that work is complemented by the talents of the actors and the director and all the craftsmen that surround a play production.
What about the craftsmen involved in Tiger Tail? Do you think you have a good group here?
I think I have quite a remarkably good group. There are only 4 major actors, and the leading lady, the one who's playing the baby doll part, she was actually suggested by Elia Kazan, who directed Baby Doll for the screen. Mr. Harry Rasky, who's directing Tiger Tail for Atlanta, he and I were walking up Broadway, and we just seen a film, I believe, and we ran into Kazan, and we told him our problem. And he said, see a girl called Elizabeth Kemp. She's appearing in a tryout of a play at the Actors Studio. We attended that play the following evening, and we found 3 members of the cast there in that play. And they were all perfect for the parts they're in, I think. And the 4th member of the part is a lady who lives in Atlanta and who's worked with the Alliance Theater quite frequently.
Do you have, what are the long-range plans for Tiger Tail?
We hope they extend, We only have from January 19th to February 14th here. But one doesn't invest this much work in a play.
Sure.
And fold after 2 weeks, if you can help it.
Sure.
Sometimes such things can't be helped. But we're making, we're sparing no effort to take it further up country, to Washington and New York if possible.
Good. Let me get back to one thing I touched on a minute ago, and that is being satisfied with your own work. When you hand over your script to the director or whoever for production, I wonder if when you hand it over, are you thinking, well, gosh, there are so many things I'd like to change, or are you fairly satisfied with it at that point? Do you ever get to that point where you say, this is it?
A lot of work is done in rehearsals.
Yeah.
A great deal. And I'm notorious for rewriting plays even after they've been produced. One play, the 2-character play it's called at present, I worked on it. I went through so many versions. I extended from 1967, when it was first produced in London, to 1977 was the last production I saw of it in Montreal, Canada.
So that covers quite a span, doesn't it?
Not sure I should have worked that long on it, because not that I don't like it, but I think I was reading over the first version and it seemed to me quite.
Do you think most writers are their own toughest critics? Are you a really tough critic? Evidently you are, of your own work. Do you think most writers are that way?
I haven't. I'm not one of those writers who derive great pleasure from the company of other writers. Except it accidentally occurs that I meet them from time to time. A few of them have been my very best friends. Some of them have been my bitterest enemies, though. So I don't know how they feel about it.
Yeah. What about speaking for yourself?
For myself, I think I'm a tough critic of my work, but not as tough as some of the professional critics.
Yeah. That's always been kind of a sore point with me, particularly the New York critics. I think they have entirely too much power. Or do they?
I believe they think so, too.
They think so. Yeah.
There are several mysteries about critics. One is who really employs them. Don't they have to satisfy their employers? You suddenly find them giving you a lukewarm notice in the newspaper and then writing a rave notice that appears in a totally unrelated magazine.
That's right.
Which is the same production, and they've treated it quite differently. That's what makes me think that the critic is not altogether free. I don't know any writer that's free. Because even the so-called freelance writer, he has pressures brought to bear upon him. The publisher says, oh, this won't go. I remember once I was writing a play about D.H. Lawrence. I was very interested in D.H. Lawrence at the time. This is 1939. I arrived in New York with the last scene of the play. And my agent at that time, not my present agent, but the agent I had at that time, said, oh, nobody's interested in D.H. Lawrence anymore. Forget it. Well, I didn't forget it. I didn't make a long play of it. I just kept the ending, which was about his death in southern France, sanitarium. It's called I Rise in Flame, Cried the Phoenix, and it's been performed successfully quite a few times, which makes me think that there is a great deal of interest remaining in D.H. Lawrence.
That's right. Is it true, though, that everybody says that critics are nothing more than frustrated writers or actors or directors themselves? Do you agree with that?
I don't think that's at all. I think that's a generality that I wouldn't buy it, no. I think some critics are very dedicated to criticism as a vocation in itself. Let's take a critic like Walter Kerr, who writes the Sunday pieces for the New York Times. I don't happen to know yet the new critic for the New York Times, or even to have read any of his notices yet. But Walter Kerr's I've been following over quite a few years. And it's obvious that he's a very brilliant man of the theater who loves theater. He's not one of those who delight in diviscerating the play and the playwright.
Yeah. So then you really think critics are a necessity of the theater, I guess?
I presume they are.
Yeah. They've certainly been around long enough.
Yes. People have to be told what they should go to see.
Yeah. This is a question I have wanted to ask you since I found out you were going to be here, and that is, evidently there are so many writers and playwrights who admire you, who look up to you. Who are the playwrights who have influenced you the most?
Chekhov, of course. Strindberg, yes. Of modern playwrights, American playwrights. Oh, I love Harold Pinter's work. Yes, Harold Pinter of England. I can't think of any other that's influenced me in America.
What about prose writers?
Prose writers, I just do my own thing.
Since this is Cinema Showcase and we deal with movies somewhat, let me spend just a couple of minutes asking you about some of the film versions of your plays. I know there haven't been many that you've been pleased with. Is there one that stands out to you as one that you're happiest with?
The answer may surprise you, but the one that was truest, least compromising, was one of the less well-known ones called the Roman Spring of Mrs. Stone, with the great Vivian Leigh,
Yes.
Warren Beatty, and Lotta Lanier, directed by Jose Quintero. It was his first film job.
Yeah. The film did turn out beautifully, and it's amazing since it was his first film.
It was completely true to the book.
Yeah.
It was written, of course, by a very superior screenwriter. I contributed bits, you know. But the screenwriter is now living in Morocco, and he's written one of the great contemporary novels called In the Night All Cats Are Gray. Who's heard of it?
Yeah.
It's an incredibly beautiful novel.
We should all read it then, I guess.
We should, if you can get hold of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Vivian Leigh, though, I saw that film, I guess, the last time about 7 or 8 months ago. And I can honestly say I don't think I ever saw Vivian Leigh in anything in which she wasn't, if not superb, at least very, very good. She had that.
She never let her work down. She gave everything she had to it. And somehow the Roman Spring Mrs. Stone fit her as beautifully as did the part of Blanche in A Streetcar. I've always felt when she made Gone with the Wind, she was a little too young. And I've always suspected that Betty Davis might have been the ideal Scarlett O'Hara.
She would agree with you.
She would have.
Right.
And so she thought so, very strongly. And her studio gave her a picture called Jezebel, you know, to compensate for not letting her do Scarlett O'Hara.
That's true. That's an interesting point. Vivian Leigh might have been
Oh,
too
she
young.
would have been. Vivian was just a little too young. It was a little too early in her career,
Yeah.
although few people would agree with me.
While we're talking about Vivian Leigh, then let's talk about what about the film version of Streetcar?
I thought that was nearly perfect. There was one slight compromise that had to be made because of censorship. They had to suggest at the end of the film that Stella would not resume her married life with Stanley. But of course she would, and that was one of the ironical points of the play.
The first film made of one of your plays, I guess, was Glass Menagerie, wasn't it?
That was the most deplorable of all the film versions of my plays. It was most embarrassing.
Well, I know you mentioned in your memoirs that Gertrude Lawrence certainly deserved better than...
Oh, she did indeed, yes. And so did John Kennedy. In fact, even Kirk Douglas deserved better. Jane Wyman. It wasn't the cast's fault. It was just that the play fell into the hands of the wrong people. And suggestions were made like, why doesn't Laura have an operation on that leg? Well, how can you lengthen a leg that's too short, you know?
Exactly, exactly.
And that she have another gentleman caller. Well, she did have the second gentleman caller, which in itself was ludicrous. Because Glass Menagerie was meant to be, well, I consider it the saddest of all my plays.
In fact, Kim Hunter, who played in Glass Menagerie here in Atlanta, I think some 2 years ago, expressed it in just that very way, as the saddest of
Oh,
of
it's
all
the
of
most
them.
tragic. It's,
Yeah.
it's the complete. Well, I've only written two true tragedies, and both of them have humor in them, incidentally. One is The Glass Menagerie, and the other is the two-character play that I worked on for 10 years. Well, Streetcar had too much comedy in it to be called a tragic play. Tragedy, it's very difficult to sell tragedy now to New York or anywhere. Maybe Europe is better. I think you still can in London and in some of the other European countries. But in America, I think people are frightened. And they want to be, they're frightened by the uncertainties that surround our economic situation and the threat of war again. And they want to escape through through mere entertainment.
Yeah. I guess that's one of the necessary evils of living in America. We have to,
Well,
we're that way.
there are many advantages.
Oh, sure, sure. Richard Brooks, who is very much in the news lately for having directed Looking for Mr. Goodbar, did several adaptations of your plays, Cat, of
Yes,
course,
he did.
and Sweet
He
Bird of Youth.
always was a great director. And now I advise people to leave all of my films, except Mrs. Stone and possibly Streetcar, 5 minutes before the end. Because very often the last 5 minutes will completely contradict the whole meaning of the play because of censorship.
Yeah.
That's what happened to Sweet Bird of Youth. Brilliantly played and directed. But the last 5 minutes had a reconciliation between Chance Wayne and the young girl whose life he destroyed through his own weakness and venality.
It's a shame they had to be made in the 50s and early 60s when
Well,
that production code was so strict.
let's hope that some of them will be remade.
What about the television adaptations that we've had in the last couple of years, like of Cat?
People say they like them. I like watching the performances. The performances are wonderful.
Let me ask you something else about directors. You had, for a long time, a marvelous association with
Eugene
Kazan.
Kazan, Gage, as we call him, yeah.
Is it necessary for a playwright to have complete trust in his director?
Oh, I think it's very important that he should. I once had a director who would have private rehearsals to which I was not admitted, which I wasn't even told about.
It's incredible.
I shan't mention his name,
Yeah.
of course.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. What was it about Kazan? Without exception.
Kazan always wanted me there, and he wanted me there as much of the time as I could stand to be there.
Every actor I have ever interviewed here who has worked with, or who hasn't worked with Kazan, say
Yeah.
that he is the director they most want to work with.
Yeah.
And I wonder why. He has some special magic with actors, I suppose.
He did, and he directed the most extraordinary way. He would go up on the stage and he'd draw an actor aside and just whisper right into the ear of the actor. And you couldn't, if you were sitting in the first row, you couldn't hear what he was saying. But then the actor would nod his head and he'd go out and do the same thing, but much, much better.
He would never insult his actors in
Oh,
front of...
no. It was all a kind of lovemaking,
Yeah.
you know?
I don't see how it could be done any other way. I know they do.
I think you have to love actors.
Yeah.
Actors need it desperately.
I know I've seen directors
Yeah.
work who shout at the actors, who call them down in front of them.
I don't think they get good results.
Do you have any plans to work with Kazan again?
Kazan is now dedicated to doing his own work, you know? Which I certainly can't fault him for.
Sure.
Why shouldn't he? He's a man about my age or a year older. And I'm sure, like anybody, oh, incidentally, I'm not 69, as somebody said in a Macon interview, and I don't have cancer.
Oh.
She said I was 69 years old with cancer. I'm not that age. I'm 66, approaching 67. Yes, and I do not have cancer.
Well, whoever wrote that review, then take.
I'm
heed.
thinking of suing, wouldn't you?
I would.
Because it turns people off.
We only have 1 or 2 minutes left, and I did want to ask you what, after Tiger Tail and after the premiere festivities and so forth, what will you work on next?
I always have a play. I have one really finished in first draft. I have a novel finished in first draft and partly in second draft. But I usually write 3 or 4 drafts, you know. And I write a good deal of poetry, occasional short story.
Or what about another novel?
Yes, I said
Your
I have
latest
a novel
novel
in
was,
first
yeah,
draft.
marvelous,
Partly
marvelous.
second draft.
Great. Okay.
I don't stop working. I work every day. It's the one thing that I'm totally committed to.
Do you have a set period of time in the morning that you work?
I wake up very early. Fortunately, they serve coffee around the clock at the Peachtree Plaza.
Good, good.
And so I have my coffee at 3 or 4 in the morning and go to work.
Great. I want to wish you much success with Tiger Tail at the Alliance Theater, and I can't thank you enough for coming by and talking. It's been a great pleasure for me.
Thank you, Jim. It's been
Thank you.
very
And come
nice.
back and see us again.
Thank you.
And my thanks to all of you for watching, and do see Tiger Tail at the Alliance Theater by Tennessee Williams. Thank you. Good night. Hello, I'm Jim Whaley. This week on Cinema Showcase, it's my great pleasure to welcome to our program our finest playwright, Mr. Tennessee Williams. He's in Atlanta for the premiere of his new play, Tiger Tail, at the Alliance Theater. So join me this week as I talk with Tennessee Williams on Cinema Showcase.